Welcome back to another episode of the InnerFight podcast, folks. How are you doing? I hope everyone's fine. My name is Marcus Smith. I'm the host of the show, and I thank you for joining me. Those of you that have joined me many times before, thank you so much. Those of you that are new to the show, I appreciate you, and I hope you're still here at the end of the show, and I hope we get to spend a lot of time together. If you do like the show, please share it with someone. That'd be awesome. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Don't share it with anyone. If you do like it, rate and review it on the various platforms. That would help us to get to more people, and that would be pretty awesome too. I think some of the things that I say, and definitely some of the things that my guests say, might help other people. Today, my guest is, to be honest, a real random one for me. Normally, I'm quite planned out. I schedule my guests in advance. I kind of know where the conversation's going. I think of different things that I know people will be good at talking about. And this one we recorded on a Monday after a conversation on a Sunday. A previous client who hadn't been to the gym for about 7 years called me up and he said, I have a guest in town who I think you'd have a really good conversation with. And when things like this happen, I think we have to listen. So I listened, and those of you that know me know that my weeks are quite planned out, and generally I don't like to play with my OCD. It just absolutely kills me. But I was like, this sounds like a conversation I don't want to miss. He was just in town for a few days from America. He'd come from Saudi Arabia, from an event in Saudi Arabia. And my friend Carsten said, I think you guys will have a really good conversation. And we did. Hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. And I really hope that it somehow, because I think we talk a lot about, definitely on the endurance podcast we do, and on this show we talk about endurance, and we also talk about fitness as well. But in this show, how we kind of try and bring spirituality and maybe our deeper cores together with the more sciencey stuff. I think today's guest did a pretty good job of that, or at least gave me a lot to think about. This week's show announcements, Ramadan Kareem to everybody. If you didn't get our mailer this week, please hop over to the InnerFight Way in the news section, read all about what's happening for Ramadan. If you don't get it in the next couple of minutes through my announcements. A couple of things to look out for. We have shifted the afternoon class timetable. The mainline class only. There's no changes to the other classes. Mainline class starts 4, 5, and then specialty class at 6 p.m. Some people are working shorter hours. Some people want to come in early. You can train 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And for those of you that have extra time and want to come and use the gym, we actually have Gym 2 as open gym now, which is available for use between 9:30 in the morning and 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Give the guys at reception a shout. They'll tell you how it works. And if you're going to come in, make sure you behave and don't snap yourself in half. That would be very, very useful. Staying on the Ramadan theme, Monday's show was all about Ramadan. If you are fasting, and even if you're not fasting, I suggest you hop over and have a listen to that show. It's only 5 minutes. And if you're living in the Middle East and you do have friends, family, or work colleagues that are fasting, hopefully it will give you some insight into maybe how those guys, what they're feeling, things that they're going through, and ways that you can help them. One way that you can help them is by showing up on the 20th of March, which is next Wednesday. We have a workout and a run. So it doesn't matter if you're from our endurance section or if you are part of our class program, even if you're part of the youth program, everyone is welcome. 5 p.m. we will do a run and a workout, one or the other, or no, it would be hard to do both. And then we will go into Iftar. Iftar is at about 6:30 or 6:34. We will put on a nice big feed downstairs. Everyone is welcome. If you would like to come, please let us know you're coming. We are preparing, well, we're not preparing, we're arranging the food. That's preparing as well. And we need to know how many people are going to be here. So let us know, either book in through MindBody or give the team at reception a shout and they will book you in. If you're looking to run during Ramadan, there is also Night Track, which happens on a Tuesday night, 7 p.m. at Sports City, same place that we run in the morning, 7 p.m. and the 6 a.m. session is still on. Final bit about Ramadan is there is a Ramadan challenge which is open to everyone. It is also on that news piece on the InnerFight Way. There is one challenge a week, total of 4 challenges. They're done in pairs. They are very simple movements. Some of them might take longer than others. Some of them you might find a little bit harder, or some might say more arduous than others. However, there are 4 challenges. It's designed to be done 1 challenge a week. If you want to do them all in the first week, you can do that. Book in with the Rockstars if you want to do it outside of the class times, which is when basically we are able to have you doing it, unless it doesn't interfere with the class, and then they can be done anytime. And most of them are actually designed that you can do them outside. But if you want to do them inside, because maybe it gets hot soon, who knows, then please just let us know and we will facilitate that. There's 4 challenges for Ramadan done in pairs. Lots of fun. Final thing, it is the last weekend of the CrossFit Open. 24.3 is announced basically when the show is made live, and we'll be hosting it again as we have done for the last 2 weeks here at the gym, 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. Last Saturday, despite all of the water that was around, incredible weather conditions, it was a little bit coming through the ceiling, but that's okay as well. It was an absolute awesome atmosphere. Nice long 20-minute workout. The first workout was nice and simple as well, snatches and burpees. Let's see what we get this weekend. It is the last weekend of the Open, last Open workout, Saturday, 10 a.m. Come, have a coffee, give them a shout. As I've said every week so far, if you like watching people work out and pushing hard, it's quite good fun to come down and have a look. That's it for this week's announcements. Let's jump into the show. This is episode number 886 of the InnerFight podcast, where science meets spirituality with Anthony Kunkel. No matter where you are in the world, thanks a lot for tuning in. Let's jump into today's show. Anthony, impromptu meeting. Welcome to Dubai.
Yeah, man, it's been great. I said Dubai seems to be my 4th Phoenix, and I would say Phoenix is my 2nd home. So I don't know. This is like my 5th or 6th home. It feels right. When it feels right, it feels right. And there's something about it just energetically feels good. It felt good flying back into here after the race even. I was like, that's a real heartwarming good sign for somebody like me.
Is this the first time you've been to the region?
It is. It is. So I was grateful to have the excuse. I kind of figured something good would happen and wrote me out into a trip out here, and here we are.
What I have to ask you, because often I'm interested for people that come from America to the Middle East. You touch down. What is your first sense? What's going on in your mind when you came into Dubai and then you went to Saudi Arabia, which we're going to go on to talk about? But what's the feeling inside of you when you first get to the Middle East?
I mean, there's a little bit of that sort of, like, I've traveled through India, right? Yeah. And just where you get there and everybody's honking all the time, and it's just like this crazy convoluted traffic show, and everything's late and everything's, which I don't mind. I like that. I think that feels kind of good. A little bit of chaos. Yeah. And I think I was expecting more of that than what I got. It's a lot more subdued and gentle of a transition. I live in a really small town. Durango, Colorado's 18,000 people in the middle of nowhere. So, it doesn't take a whole lot for me to feel like I'm in the big city. Yeah. And so I think I was expecting a little more chaos than I got. And then I've had this whole trip, I've kind of had mixed emotions about, like, what am I allowed to like? Like, is this a good thing, or are they just giving me special treatment because, like, I have a US passport and I'm kind of pretty or something? Like, I'm kind of conflicted. It's like, okay, if I'm really enjoying this, which, like, yeah, Dubai's been great to me. Yeah. I'm kind of like, well, you know, what if I was a woman? Would I feel differently? It's like, what if I was, I don't know, like, I have gay friends back home that are like, I'm not going to join you for that one. It's like, oh, okay. And I don't know. So yeah, I kind of have this, I'm really intentionally not putting the baggage that's thrown at my foot, at my feet. I'm trying not to carry that forward into any of this, and trying to receive what's actually out here.
Is there do you feel a lot of that? Do you feel like there's a preconception? Let's not turn this into too much of a political show, but obviously US, Middle East, there must be preconceptions when you say to people, yeah, I'm going to go and race in Saudi Arabia and I'm stopping off either end of the trip in Dubai. I'm sure some people back home went, you're going to do what?
Yeah, big time. I mean, especially with all of my more politically globally minded people are like, Saudi's getting into that whole, like, Israel, Palestine, the heightening of things right now. And part of me says, okay, yeah, all I really have to offer the world is debatably my endorsement. I mean, that's like, as an athlete, as a full-time athlete, that's kind of what your currency is. Yeah. And by being here and doing this stuff, I am endorsing this stuff. Yeah. But that doesn't seem, that's not the way that I actually view things. The way that I would view things is much more, and this is probably naive, I guess, but it really is genuinely where my heart is, of this Olympic ideal of, if everything is worse than it's ever been over here, that's a reason to come over here and run circles with each other.
Yeah.
Like I don't care who you are. You go out there and you bleed on the same sand, and it becomes sacred. You know, like we've created something ethereal and temporary and I think beautiful. And when we all finish and we're just this like crying, dirty pile of humanity, that puts some sort of energetic frequency out to the world, even just in a literal, you know, in a more tangible sense of like, you get on your plane and you're just like smiling at the pilot or somebody when you exit. It's like there's a certain level of warmth that I think you kind of all emanate when you have this beautiful human experience. And I think that alone is, in my own mind, like that's how I'm justifying anything that someone could try to say about, you should go over here, you shouldn't go over there, or if this, then this. It's like, I don't know. I'm just, if it's a great time, then it's a great time. And if it's a turbulent time, then we needed it even more than we would otherwise. And so
it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people get quite caught up in the news and they build up a lot of anger and sometimes hatred and anxiety. And it's kind of the polar opposite of what you're saying, that plays out in quite a negative way, because they go into their workplace maybe a little bit angry about what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
And they withdraw from certain things because of what's going on in the world, because of certain beliefs, which I respect. I think, you know, if that's what you want to do. Whereas you've kind of flipped this thing on the head and gone, well, you know, if I can just be a nice guy and bring a little bit of positive energy, then that's what I can do. Like, you can't change what's going on. I can't change what's going on, but what you can choose the way that you behave. And that's just to bring your vibe with you.
And it's tough to even know what's going on. Like, is this one old, almost dead white guy that has some vendetta against whatever the local colloquialism for almost old dead white guy is out here? It's like still old, but it's like, you know, is this some petty vendetta between two people that have too much money and don't know what to do with each other? Whereas the millions of people under them would all be friends and just could have a meal together and bro out and have a good hug and a sweat and a sauna. And it's like, I don't, you know, you put the average citizen into a cold plunge and into a sauna and they love each other. Like, I don't care. Like your flag, your creed, your version of God, like none of that stuff matters anymore. You're just like, I love you, man. This is good.
This is good.
I would like to, because I live such a privileged life that I spend so much time in that state.
Yeah.
It seems like it makes a lot of sense for me to kind of peddle that. Like that's something that I have, that's my wealth. You know, if it was money and I could say you're on hard times, here's money. Yeah. I like to think I would do that the same way, but because my wealth is really in that state and in these crazy flow experiences, it seems like the natural thing for me to do is to just say, here you go, man. Does that make sense to you? Oh, absolutely. Cool. All right, let's go.
It's good. That's how we'll fix the world. Let's move away from politics and back into sport, mate. Tell us a little bit about what you actually do.
Yeah, man. I occasionally get to meet God. And like, I really think that's the job description right now. If I was like hiring for a replacement, that's like the mission of it. So I think when I do these training sessions, I've done everything from, I guess the shortest race I've done in the past year was a 5K.
Right.
And then I've done a couple of snowshoe races on there. And then I've done a handful of like hour-ish races. So like 10-mile races or a couple of half marathons. And I took a crack at the Olympic marathon trials standard for the marathon for the US and had to pull out with a hamstring injury. It's kind of a bummer. And, I do a little bit of everything. So it's anywhere from about half hour to about 7 hours. I can hold my own. And the sweet spot in there is probably about 5 to 6 hours. So in the mountains, that might be a 50K. On the roads, that might be a 50-mile or even 100K. And so I was able to turn that into a 50-mile national championship win for the US, which got me into the pool for the IOC to compete for the 100K world champs. And then 6 months later, which the 50 miles was kind of a fluke. It was like, obviously the harder you work, the luckier you get, whoever gets credit for that. But it was gravel. It was thousands of feet of gain and loss. And it was like 85 degrees in the fall. And the morning of it, I had my hoodie up and my sweats on, and I open up the door because, of course, where I'm from in Colorado, if the sun isn't out, it's cold. Right. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is. And I open up the door, and this hot, wet, 30 plus degrees Celsius air just rolls into the car and steams everything. And I was like, I looked at my crew, said, I just won my first national championship, because it's like, there's no way when it's hot, no one can beat me.
Yeah,
and
right.
So that was kind of a fluke, the first one. And then 6 months later, we had myself being the current 50-mile national champ. We had the previous year's 100K national champion, and we had the very recently crowned 50K national champion. We all threw down over 25K loops. And instead of hot, it was, I would love the conversion because it's very cold, but it was -5 degrees Fahrenheit with the wind chill.
That's
when we started.
The man who's sat here, he can Google
which is
quickly for us.
I mean, really, you want to leave that one in Fahrenheit because -5 doesn't sound that bad. I'm sure it's like -20 in Celsius, and it's going to sound even worse. But it was miserable. It was humid and it was cold. It was the opposite. And instead of like a nice.
There we go.
Yeah, so it was kind of the opposite scenario. And then we all threw down, and I won the 100K champs and got auto entry for Team USA for the 100K World Championship under the International Olympic Committee.
Wow.
Went there, had this like really, really horrible, stressful experience on the front end, and then kind of less so on the back end. Once I raced poorly, it was kind of like the pressure was off. Yeah. But the whole thing was underfunded and under-respected and under everything. We were kind of just, I don't know. I don't think I have to worry about ruining a future sponsorship with Nike at this point, but it's like we were just pawns between our governing body and Nike to like make a few bucks. And it was just very obviously not about pride or not for the country or ourselves or the sport or any of it. It really, really felt hollow. And it kind of feels like, looking back at it, it's like that was the dream of a child. You know, what 10-year-old doesn't think about competing at the international stage or like having your country across your chest? And to have that experience at whatever I was, I mean, that was 2018. So whatever, mid to late 20s in your life. And then to have it be empty, I really felt kind of homeless without that dream for a while. Like I felt like, well, now what? You know, I got it. I got it faster than I thought I would, and it was totally empty. So now it's like not only was the dream empty, but I have time to turn and pivot. So it's not dissimilar to when you're injured. It might take you 10 days, it might take you 10 months to actually pivot and do what you can with what you have at the time. And it took me a little while to kind of, I was disillusioned in the true sense, like the veil was lifted. And so I've spent the last few years now more focused on what's the most inspiring thing that I can do with this machine that I've built? Because it takes so long to build an aerobic base. I mean, years and years and years. You definitely can understand. And I'm assuming your listeners can as well. It's like it takes years. And then guess what? All you do is it just builds slower, so that it takes even more years to build it more. So now I'm like, well, what? Okay, I've built this engine. Like I don't just want to try to run a few minutes faster in the marathon. I want to do something with this. And it's taken me, I guess, 5 years or so to feel like I really have a confident answer for so now what? And the so now what is going to cool places and seeing cool things and exchanging my skin biome for the local one and using this as a way to really directly connect with things. And I think there's a certain like resonance, I guess, that you take on, because it's not just like you're exuding it, you're not putting it out to the world, you're kind of becoming this frequency. And when you get into this space, you kind of resonate with stuff around there, and so you really do exchange directly with the territory that you're in. And I want to see what that feels like all over the place. I think you're meeting the land, and you're attuning with it truly. And so I would like to do more and more of that. And in the last few years, I've done this pilgrimage route in the spring. We just posted up on YouTube. It's a $1,000 documentary. And like a lot of that was eaten up by food and oil change, like gas in the car. Like it was a zero budget film, and we just posted it up on YouTube. It's called 11 Days Away. I'm sure we can put it in the podcast notes.
We'll put it in the notes.
And that's the kind of thing that I want to lean more into. It's like, find a sacred site, find the best way to toil, to earn my way into that sacred site, and then be able to go close to a mountain or touch some monastery or walk up some stairs or hug some person. And I want to put these things together and put it into a package that's bigger than running a faster 5K around a circle, right? There has to be more out there.
I'm sure. Tell us, what are your earliest memories of running?
That's a good one. I played football growing up, like soccer, as Americans are supposed to call it for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my first memory of really liking that feeling of like you finish a few hours in the heat and you're all sweaty and vibrating and sitting in a middle car seat in the back of the car and drinking a Gatorade and just feeling like you could feel all the blood going through your skin. And I can remember the satisfaction of that. And that's probably the glowing earliest memory I have of putting out effort. Shortly after that, I do definitely have memories of like inline skating and just the satisfaction of like pumping blood into your legs.
Yeah.
And yeah, just working hard for a while. Even kicking a soccer ball around the field. Like I remember I just kind of, even from a very young age, it's like, I wish this ball it wasn't even involved. Like I don't even care about the goals. I just want the effort out here. Like I just want us all to sweat. But my parents weren't athletes. Like I had no one in my life that would have looked at me and said, "Oh, well, your body build is good for this," or that would favor, you should try these sports. Like there just wasn't any kind of connection with that.
So how did you navigate it then?
Blind, dumb luck. I went to high school in Chicago. I don't know how I picked up running there. It's horrible. Like the weather's horrible. Everyone's pale and unhappy. Like it's not a good place to fall in love with being outside. I can't really even, I don't know that I can credit it to anything. Not even myself. Like, I don't know that I can point a finger and say, maybe it was meant to be. I don't know.
You seem quite driven and quite passionate about running now. Do you have any idea when that sort of started? You talked earlier about like dreams, that Nike blew apart there and stuff. But when did you start to think, actually, I can be quite good at this, or I am quite good at this, and setting goals around?
I'm still probably trying to think that. I don't know that I could be all that good at this. Like there's people that are effortlessly good at this, and that's kind of it's kind of heartbreaking, really. Like
what do you see as effortlessly good?
Like I'll see people where like I'm measuring my life to the half hour.
Right.
Like I'm iterating an 8-week period and making tiny tweaks to make it more effective. And then I'm showing up on the start line, and when it's just right, I can compete with anyone in the world. But a lot of those anyones are like rolling out of bed at an arbitrary amount of time, not tracking sleep. They have a cup of coffee and a Pop-Tart, and they can run with me. It's like, man, that's not fair.
Does that not make you think maybe their recipe is a decent one? It
could be. It's a good argument. Obviously, when you're a kid, you don't care about all these things. And what I've found is, in the things that are objectively measurable, like race times even, I can create a perfect state for a 6-hour period more than 50% of the time by controlling all the stuff that I control. And then I'm restlessly tweaking that formula all the time.
Is that a personality trait?
Yes. Yeah, that part of it is, that's a talent that I have. Like it's not that I enjoy structure, because I definitely don't. If left to my own, everything in my life would be a mess, and all my room would just be a strewn pile of piles, right? Like everything would be a mess. But because I have such a drive to create some still water and some blank canvas to kind of slap colors against and see what feels good, that's the drive that it takes for me to kind of simplify everything and make it a little more tidy.
Where did that, I guess part of that structure is probably curiosity.
It's 100%. I think it is. Subjectively, that's what it feels like. At least it's not that I like tidiness, or that I like being boring, or that I want to eat another can of sardines at 1 p.m. for every day for 50 days in a row. It's like, it's more that I really want to know if X or Y or whatever intervention works. And the only way that I can really find out, I can sit around and twiddle my thumbs until someone puts millions of dollars into testing to see if 145-pound male college athletes, if a hydrogen supplement or like a C60 we were talking about, if a C60 supplement helps them recover faster, or I can just make my life stable and find out if it works for me because I don't need to know. And that's kind of empowering. I mean, I think we're kind of in the sweet spot of, that's what I've been drawn to from the get-go. I mean, somewhere about halfway through high school, it was less that I thought I can be good enough to be like a pro at this, and more that I thought, first I read Roger Bannister's book about breaking the 4-minute mile. And I liked that angle of, it's not that I think I'm better than everyone. I've measured all of my data. This is possible. I can break a 4-minute mile. Like, right. I understand you're saying my heart will explode, I'll die, whatever. But it's not swagger. It's not ego. It's nothing like that. Like, it's just scientific intrigue that he's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And like, that's largely what pushes me with my own running. It's like, it's not, if you're willing to say, I can do that too, I'll say, yeah. If you think so, dude, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it together. But if you're willing to say, well, the best I can do is this, and I think I can do better, then like, you're damn right. Like, I'm going to tell you that I'm shooting higher than you. Like, let's make a story then, if that's what we need to. So I guess that's probably the genesis of a lot of it, is that period of somewhere while transitioning through high school of first getting into a few different runners, then getting into running at large, then getting into exercise physiology, then getting into anatomy and physiology in earnest. And I remember I had this moment where I was at a bookstore and I forget what the book was. And I was looking for this book and I couldn't find it. And I go up front and they're like, oh, well, it's because it's in textbooks. I was like, okay, I'm hunting for like a junior level college textbook right now for leisure reading while I'm on like winter break or something. Like, this is probably something that's not normal. Yeah. And that was kind of there was a coming of age moment in there of like, okay, I'm on some sort of track here. I don't know where or what or why, but that's where it gets really weird and woo woo and spiritual, is you're like, I don't know why this is right, but I'm just positive that there's a lifetime of work to do in this. And if endurance athletics teaches us something, one of the top things in there is like, thinking is rarely a good thing to do. It's like, you're rarely going to think your way into much better. And so it's like, if you kind of know the next step to take, I tend to think you should just take that step and then take the next step and take the next step and take the next step. And at some point you'll have some beautiful picture maybe, but right now you should probably stop worrying about what step 70 is if it's stopping you from taking step 6 or 7. It's like, just put in the work.
But there's a certain amount of conflict there, right? Between managing a lot of data, being curious, trying to control controllables on one side, and naturally your brain is going to start worrying about what step 70 is, because you've created a brain, an order and a process of things that says this, and we're going to take this into consideration. You've mentioned it. We're going to track sleep. We're going to use this supplementation. We're going to do all of these things because my curiosity has got me there. But then telling the brain, so we've put it all in this order till now, and then telling the brain, stop. We'll worry about the next steps when we come to them. And that creates conflict in people's minds, doesn't it? It's like, it's be prepared, but don't worry about what's next.
Well, and also do everything that's right. Do everything right, perfectly, like everything. But if you don't do it right, don't stress about it.
Yeah.
That is a big ask, but
huge.
That's enlightenment, right? I mean, that's the biggest ask you could ask for. Yeah. But also that's the point. And you don't have to be perfect at it. You can try. I mean, especially in long endurance athletics, I'm 31 years old. I very well might have 15 more years of doing this. And I've been doing this at a pretty tippy top level for many, many years. That's a daunting amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot. That's, you break that down into like 12-week seasons, and I don't take an off season. It's like, that's going back into the fire so many times. I mean, that's dropping the ball and ruining everything and, kicking the can down the road and being upset and being elated and having it all click and having a countless number of more times. I mean, that's almost a daunting amount more of work. And so I think I'll get it right at some point. I think I'm getting closer, but yeah, that is a challenge. I really loved Alex Hormozy had a thing where he said something to the effect of, don't forget America was built on the backs of people that smoked cigarettes and, ate bacon and black coffee or something. Yeah. It's like, if you miss your morning cold plunge, get over yourself. Yeah. So like that's kind of, I don't know, a little harsher than I would go about things.
Yeah.
But that's the same message of this sort of, I mean, really the best summary is that. The best summary is you want to do everything absolutely perfect. You want to have no gaps, no missed days, no nothing. But then when you do miss it, the second you've missed that window, or you even realize I can't get it done, oh man, I'm going to be on a plane, I'm going to miss my sauna or something. It's like, immediately just push it out of your consciousness. It doesn't exist anymore. And the second you get back onto that schedule, hop back in there and control it again.
Have you looked to what some of the fastest guys in the world, the fastest runners in the world, and how they behave?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had a chance to train with a lot of really incredible athletes in the OCR space, obstacle course racing, in the functional fitness space, and at least brief stints, if not slightly more elaborate stints, with like really, really impressive world-class mountain runners and some dudes on the roads that are, you know, Olympic potential for that sort of thing. And it's always good. I think everyone has little things figured out perfectly, and then they have a bunch of shit that they think they have figured out that's garbage. And I'm not immune to that at all. Like guaranteed, if you hang out with me, oh man, 10% of what I tell you, take that to the bank. Like that's gold. That's going to make you achieve enlightenment. Like that's going to bring you bliss in your life. The other 90% is probably shit. Now, the question is in the modern world where everything is so polarized and everything is so fervent and like religious status, people don't want to hear from someone. The second you realize someone has been wrong about anything ever, you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure. But I think the most valuable people on the planet that are really like pushing the dialogue forward, that are avant-garde, I think they're wrong more than they're right. They're artists. They're crazy people. Yeah. But so it's a matter of me finding these people and kind of getting the gems from it. And that's something I'd like to do more of even as time goes by. But living in Colorado in the US, I can go right over to Colorado Springs, and the Olympic Training Center is there, and American Distance Project is out there, and there's some amazing athletes who just go get my ass kicked by every day. But even racing, I think racing I started seeing that as an exchange of culture at some point in my early 20s, where it was like just running next to this guy, I absorbed his confidence for the day. Or you talk to these Northeast Africans and they'll look you right in the face and be like, yeah, you can go 2:16 in the marathon for sure. Like without it, we ran together. You're fine. You will go 2:16 in the marathon. And they mean that. And it's like, we have such a toxic culture in America, at least. I think in the West at large, where it's like, if someone says that they think they're hot shit, you like want to bring them down a peg. Yeah. You don't say like, yeah, dude, that's pretty cool that you think you can do that. Like, let's find out if you can. And maybe out of love, if it's someone that you're, that you're responsible for, you might be like, okay, you can do that if this laundry list of things happens. Yeah. It's like, well, maybe if you stop eating like you're 12 years old, then you can be a world champion. And it's incredible what people, it really is. That's one of the gems that I've seen, but that's part of the draw with something like this Mutter event in Alula is I've done a few obstacle course races, and I have some talent in obstacle course racing, along with just years of building an aerobic base. But it's less that I wanted to come out here and beat these dudes, and equally, at least, that I want to go out there and like just watch them move. I think more than what they could tell me is what they could show me.
What do you see some of to those guys, or to the guys that you've trained with in the States, top guys, fast guys that you're inspired by? What are some of the biggest differences that you identify between what they are, how they approach training, and how you approach it as well?
I mean, I'm all in. Like, I'm very, like, there's no chill in a lot of my training, right? Like, it's if it's controllable, and if you tell me that there's a 1% chance that I'll get a little bit, it's not about even results even. If you could tell me that I'll be a little more blissful on race day if I just eat like 30 grains of sand a day. It's like, all right, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's try to not wear away all my enamel somehow, because I'm going to do this, right? And I think a lot of people it is that balance of stress thing. Like, the amount of stress that it would take them to do more of their stuff right would degrade from their performance. And sometimes I suspect that we all we self-select our level of like chaos that we can allow and control that we can put energy into. And like, if what I was doing was spinning my wheels so hard, trying to control everything that it was stressing me out, I think I would self-select and doing less and less and less and less. And if the competition was telling me you're almost good enough, but you're not good enough yet, then maybe I would look around and start looking for things.
Yeah.
And that's the two sides of the same coin with that scenario of people at the top are so talented that it's hard to know what's talent and what's
hard work.
What's design. Yeah. I mean, I tend to think we're all working hard. Like, so what, so you're running 120 miles a week. So what? Everyone is.
Yeah.
You know what? So like, so what? So you bear crawled a half a mile today. Like, who cares? Like, so did this guy. So did this guy. Like, so it's really hard to get an edge on any of that stuff, which is, I think that's what drives me into all the weird stuff. I'm like, okay, what won't people do? Okay, now what won't people do that also is beneficial? Give me the Venn diagram on those two things, and like, let's just start doing that stuff. But
what have you found on that list
that delivers?
Yeah. Well, or maybe that doesn't. Maybe experienced.
Oh, there's thousands of things that don't deliver.
Some stuff that you thought. So
yeah.
By the sounds of things, you probably wouldn't go into something that you weren't 100% confident that would work, but I'm sure not everything has worked. So maybe some examples of stuff that protocols that you've followed that have been successful, and some that have fallen on their face could be interesting to hear about.
Yeah. I mean, the trendier stuff about sleep hygiene is no nonsense. Even changing 10 or 11 time zones coming out here. It's like I changed my watch onto Alula time like 2 days before I got out here, just to kind of be cognizant of that and kind of plant the seeds. And then on the flight over, I had my last meal in my normal eating window, and then didn't eat on the flight until the local window was back open again. And so, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. And that's something that delivers. That like circadian, my natural sleep is garbage.
Right.
Like I sleep like a baby. Like, and everyone says that like it's like babies sleep well, but like really deep, and then you're awake for 3 hours and then you'll be back awake, and my sleep's not great. And so getting like morning light and being intentional about your circadian rhythm, that's delivered. And a lot of people pay lip service to that, but then it's like, okay, how? And I have the privilege of, I invite people to my house all the time. And so I see what the average person is like if left to their own, or like traveling for a race. And a lot of people are, they're using blue blocking glasses or an evening filter on their iPhone, but then they're falling asleep with the television on.
Yeah. It's, there's a lot of contradictory things going on, right?
Yeah. So a lot of it is, as much as I love all the like biohacking toys and sups and interventions, a lot of it is just getting rid of the direct barriers for your success. It's like, go into your room at night. You should barely be able to see your feet if at all. It's like, if you could read, if you could even read large block letters, your room is way too bright. Yeah. And so it's like, get that in there. It's like one of the things on the flight over, as soon as it was supposed to be dark in Alula time, when it normally is, I put on the blue blockers. And that's not a very common thing, but just a pair of yellow glasses. It's like, throw on something like that. It was shocking how quick I transitioned to the time zone where I wasn't tired during the day. I was exhausted at like 9:30. I fell asleep. I slept a full night. I woke up. I was energetic. I was awake. I mean, I slept as well or better than I do at home. Like that.
Amazing.
And so that was done. That was also on, like, you could appreciate this from a cycling world. That was on like 90 grams of ketone esters on the flight. That was like ketones before, ketones during, ketones after. And I was using KE4 by Ketoneaid. So like one of the actual ketone esters, not like a R13 butanediol, that if I did that much, I would have been drunk, which is a good time on the right when it's on purpose. But yeah, ketones have delivered a lot for me. The like light dark exposure has delivered a lot. I do cold and heat. I'm really, really happy to see that getting trendy right now, because it delivers.
You're happy to see people just posting about it on Instagram and not knowing anything that they're talking about.
At least they're doing it. Well, I mean, at least people are kind of, they're getting exposed to the idea. So that's all you can ask for. I mean, I don't remember the last thing that we saw that was like purely good and not manipulative. So at least if the intent has the potential to be good, then I'll choose to be a unrealistic optimist.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's similar to sort of when everyone went vegan, right? Well, if they're eating more vegetables than they were, and they're eating less processed food than they were,
yep,
it's a net win.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of value just in saying no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like sometimes I think that's kind of the ultimate confounding thing. That's even more intensive than like a placebo effect is like maybe alcohol has slight benefits, but I'm getting awesome benefits just by being like, I don't drink alcohol, period.
Yeah.
It's like that's my manifesto with alcohol anyway. It's like, that probably has value in and of itself. Just being like, I don't do that because I'm an adult and I made a decision. It's like there's probably value in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a certain amount of consciousness around it. Same as it's sort of the same thing, isn't it? You've made these decisions to behave in a certain way, to get more in touch with awareness around circadian rhythm, to understand more how your body works, to track certain things. You've just created awareness and consciousness around it.
Yep.
And if someone else can do that through another medium, then that's absolutely excellent. But we become better human beings when we're more conscious, more aware of what's going on. That's the bottom line. And how you get to that is kind of, some people need to run ultramarathons to have enlightenment. And others go and have ayahuasca, and others, come close to fatality with alcohol and drug abuse to get the same thing. But it's actually, everyone comes out the other side, hopefully the ones that do, with more awareness and consciousness around themselves. Yeah. It's just the recipe is, are the East Africans doing the same as the American runners? Absolutely not. Who's going faster? At the moment, the East Africans are. Are the Americans close? Sure. But the track to get there is, is incredibly different. But that's okay as well. Like, it's not a...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of... I mean, that's the function of language, right?
Yeah.
So we can communicate our path and get here. And the truth exists in this wonderful shared space between all these things. I mean, that's where the enlightenment is, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said something... No, where should we... Let's go to Alula first, because you said another thing that I want to go back to. Let's talk about... We started talking about why you're in the region, but you recently did, and we've got to give our friends in Saudi Arabia a plug. We're all trying to figure out what's going on. No one really knows. Public investment fund, all of this, that, and the other. Everyone who's listening probably has their own opinion, same as they did about the politics at the start. But you were in Saudi Arabia racing in a race. Take us through sort of how you got there, what the race was, what was attractive about it, and how that experience went down. Yeah,
some secondarily governmental organization, I guess, is my understanding, threw a bunch of money for a prize money event out in Alula, and the area looked beautiful, looked amazing. Yeah. It looked like mixed feelings again about like, okay, they're building a tourist industry out here and they haven't even excavated what's out there. And like, we might be ruining and polluting, or just, not even through malice, but just through ignorance.
Yeah,
right?
Mainly.
We might not be totally welcome in this area by the land itself quite yet, without knowing what's there. But yeah, so they put up this money, and the second I found out about it, I have basically no love for me in the obstacle course racing community, because like, I'll come in there, I'll have huge goals.
Yeah.
I'll crush a race or two. And then because it's not financially viable unless you're a good old boy, unless you've already been in there for a decade.
Yeah.
Then I'll get out of it, and I'll go back and I'll run on the trails, and I'll run on the roads, and I'll get a little prize money here, and I'll do some biohacky stuff, and I'll like, make sure my electric bill gets paid for another 6 months. And then I'll see an event. I'll say, I'd like to get back into that. And then I'll do a crash course and train for whatever it was, 7 weeks before. It was like 12 weeks this time. Yeah. And go from marathoning, where I'm not allowed to pick up anything heavier than a grocery bag, and try to minimize that. You can appreciate that, cycling. Yeah. And then suddenly to, okay, let's get as burly as I can, and, maybe pack on 10 pounds and just get durable to where I could, be picked up and dropped a bunch of times and not break. And so, yeah, I'm always looking for an excuse to kind of get back into the obstacle course racing world, since I haven't managed to like really transition over.
Right.
And so they supported a bunch of people, unfortunately not me, and gave them all, you know, I'm not exactly sure how much help they got, but they got enough help to get out here and race. And so when those people started posting on social media, like there's prize money, it's this, I was like, oh, okay. So guaranteed I'll get like, I think I'm going to leave with like $3,500, which that's like, I don't know, 14 months of disposable income for me, probably. Yeah. It's like above my base. Like I live like a monk, man. That's great. And so that'll cover all my odds and ends for the trip and what have you. So I found out this event was going on. I found out it was 8 hours. It's a 10K loop. It's just over 20 obstacles per loop, as many loops as you can in 8 hours. And that all fits me really, really well. So I said, all right, this is the perfect event for me to just like make some waves and also kind of hopefully establish something out here. This area seems to be, even before I got out here, seemed to be speaking to me. I really love the desert.
Yeah.
And I have some draw to this area in the world, something about the rock or the angle of the sun in the sky or something. There's something cool, energetic about it out here. And so when I saw that, okay, this is my excuse to get out there, I kind of, anymore these days, I kind of wait for stuff to fall into my lap because I always have great things just falling into my lap. And so I'd like to just be receptive to that. And it seemed like this is the kind of thing you don't say no to. So I reached out to a few sponsors and booked some stuff and secured a local host out here in Dubai, which is delivered exponentially more than I would have thought. Way more than a couch on every level. And yeah, so I booked everything, and it seemed a little bold, especially with the, like, it's not flying into a major airport. It's not like a big city marathon where you just fly into Chicago and get a room and then the elite liaison picks you up and that's that. It's like you're getting out there and you're in tents out in the middle of the desert. So I knew it was going to be a little bit of an adventure, but I'm not needy. I can roll with the punches.
Yeah.
So here we are.
You said Alula, like, should we be there? Shouldn't we be there? It's an amazing place with an insane amount of history when you actually look into it. Should we be there, mate? Because I think about that a lot, and like some of the events that have been on there from, you know, I think one of the earliest events that I saw hosted there was a big polo competition. They've had trail races there. A few weeks ago, they had the Alula Tour cycling there, and they're trying to do a lot of different things. You'd have seen there's quite a lot of tourism there, some interestingly set up sort of hotels and But it's exactly what you said. It's you fly into a shed, a little bit bigger than a shed. You know,
the airport's really nice. It's nicer than my airport back home.
It's very nice, but it's not. It's not big.
Yeah,
like
one terminal.
It's one terminal. It's quite small, and it's probably been welcoming people on an international scale only for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean it wouldn't be hard to have. Like, I think I paid $120 some bucks US for the visa to get in. I would love to think that some of that could go to an ever widening circle of like, okay, what do we not want to damage?
Yeah.
Like what needs some red tape for people? I think you could do some initiative like that. That seems like it would be easy to do. Obviously that's not my place to say or not, but I think there's two things on that. The pragmatic answer that comes to my mind is they invited us, and I went there and I was as respectful as I know how to be. And it was, I believe that territories don't give, territories give back, right? If you give something, if you give your soul to something, to a chunk of land, it'll give you something back. Nice. And that's bigger than even the people that own that land or that have lived in that land. Now, the people that have lived in that land, though, they've been giving a lot more than you have, and their ancestors have too. So they have some stuff figured out, even if they don't consciously know that it took them lifetimes to figure out. So you will never figure it out. You don't have lifetimes, you have one. So there's a certain level of humbleness that you have to go into those scenarios with. But I think my kind of hippie woo-woo corollary to all that would be, I asked it. I mean, I asked the mountains and I asked the sand if I can be there. You know, I had this vivid image going into the race of this like moment that I would have. And it wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be, but the moment was identical. I mean, it was a flashbulb memory of something that hadn't happened yet. And I was going through this tunnel, and it's like, it was like Prince of Persia or Indiana Jones, or like the minimal amount of exposure I have to like loose sand and red rock and all this stuff in the US. Yeah. And I just had this moment where the wind was just howling, just ripping, and I'm crawling under this thing. They call it trench warfare, where you're like in this underground tunnel under a like tarped up thing, and you're all stooped in there. Thankfully I'm short, so I'm not that stooped. And I'm stooped in, my hands are just sinking into the sand. And instead of thinking like, oh God, this is so hard and it's like pulling me down and it's weighted, I was just like a kid just playing. And I was like, it's so nice. It's like soft and forgiving, and like planting my feet with so much intentionality of just like feeling the sand under my body. And I felt like it was welcoming. And not even that, I know it was welcoming. It's like, so I could be wrong. I could be delusional. I could be crazy, but I know what I saw and what I felt. And it was like a warm hug, man. It was like,
that's cool. It was
just this deep, intimate moment that we had. And it was 3 seconds or 30 seconds. And it was everything. And that's so cool. There's something to, I think it's, what book is that? Stranger in a Strange Land. Is that what it is with grokking? You know something intuitively by touching it. Okay. Basically. And so you grok this thing.
Right.
And there's something about, we have our stories and we have our interpretations, and they're not wrong. They're just someone else's story. They're grappling with the same ideas that, make good people stutter or repick their words in a good podcast, right? Like they're struggling with ideas in real time. The story isn't fixed, even though we inherited it. And so there's something to that, touching it and just being receptive to what is and trying to figure out what actually is there without your own bullshit story overlaid over it, or worse, interpreting what you're receiving. Yeah. But I've been places that feel prickly, that feel unwelcoming, that feel like they're not for me. And I've been to places, and Alula was one of those places that feels like the ground itself feels like we're vibrating at the same frequency or something.
Very cool. And links in actually to what I was going to ask you before, and what you said is more around trying to do things to create connection, to create impact. I think we're always going to chase times, because that's how we're programmed. We're programmed a lot to, okay, if your 5K times 20 minutes, make it 1959 next time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Not at all.
But it becomes, for a lot of people, it can become paralyzing a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Because their mind is one track to chasing that time. You said that you want to chase things that have impact, that have meaning, and take you to the experiences like the one you just described in Alula. How do you see that kind of playing out over, you said you've got 15 years left, maybe thereabouts.
Yeah.
For sure, hopefully, God willing, you'll be still running around at 65, 70, mate. But how do you see that playing out? And is the landscape changing? And by that, I mean, previously, if you couldn't, if you're not sub 2:15 marathon, no running brand wants to speak to you. But now, if you're willing to go to Alula, or if you're willing to go and have almost a spiritual experience through running in a foreign land, suddenly some running brand, it's not Nike because of what you said earlier, but someone's willing to talk to you. So the landscape's changing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think elite athletes are quick to hate on the influencer model. But an elite athlete is paid to sell shoes just like an influencer is paid to sell shoes. Like, don't get this twisted. Like, don't think that because you're fast that you're entitled to anything at all.
Yeah.
And so if you're fast,
we'll take that as a grab. That's a good one. I think because you're fast, you're entitled to anything at all.
Yeah. There's a thing. I thought about converting it, translating it into Arabic and writing it on my arm for the race. Yeah. But there's this line from the Bhagavad Gita that I I've just fell in love with this last training block, and I've played around with any kind of like holy book. I'm all about it.
Right.
It's just that's infinitely fascinating because I think I'm pretty smart, but I don't think I'm the smartest person ever. And even if I did think that, I'm tied with 20,000 other people behind me who have talked to each other and lived 80 years maybe.
Yes.
They have shit figured out that I don't have figured out. Like there is something I can get. Again, even if it's 90% garbage, like the 10% is good, really, really good. Yeah. And I'm going to lose myself in this one with the Gita, but there's this line that was your, depending on the translation, like you're entitled to your work, but only for your work's sake. You're not entitled to the fruits of your work. And I've this whole training block, it's like, not the fruit, man. You are entitled. And also a lot of people hear that and it's kind of softening, but I think it can be empowering too, because it's not just like, yes, like I'm at peace. I'm a transcendent being and I'm not entitled to the fruits of my labor. If instead you say, yes, I am entitled to my labor. Like you feel your body working and you're like, I'm entitled to this. Like this is mine. Like this is mine in a way that nothing else on this planet. You could take everything else away from me. You could argue out of it. You could intellectually present a case that it's not mine. This is mine. Like this is me, and it's wonderful. I don't even remember where we started with that. I get lost when I start thinking about
it's more
too esoteric stuff.
But I think it's good to go on that. It's more about where is the journey, not more about, the question was about like, where does your journey go? Because you're at an interesting point. You can perform, you can run fast, and you can run fast for short distance. You can run fast for 50 miles. It's not a joke. You want to experience, you want to impact, you want to connect with the earth.
Yes.
Where does it go to, and how do the two sort of, do they merge, or do you have to leave? Is it a case of leaving one behind?
It's a little bit of both. So I measure more stuff, more metrics, more data, and I analyze it all until about 5 weeks out from race day. Right. Once I start hitting peak weeks, I don't really care about that stuff anymore. And part of that is it's less that it's personal and more that it's like really, really, really personal. Like it's idiosyncratic. It's only me. It's because if you are a naturally clean person and you have to learn to live with chaos, you will approach it the opposite way that I would describe probably. But because I'm a naturally ethereal, chaotic person, I think, and I'm okay with that, and I'm bringing the structure in, like I always say, it's a monkey in a tuxedo, right? Like this isn't me. Like the data is not me. It's a monkey in a tuxedo. Like this is a trick that I do. You feed me peanuts and I'll get on the unicycle, right? Yeah. And so that's what all the data is to me. And so the closer I get to race day, the less the data matters. And by the time that I get to race day, I mean, I think I probably burned my wrist a little bit out in the desert because I don't typically wear sunscreen and I didn't have my watch on. I'm not going to wear a watch. It's race day. Like I've spent 3 months calibrating my body. That's what all this data is for. Now on the roads, sure. And a really good addition to that would be where the data. So that would be an example of setting one thing aside to chase the enlightenment angle, right? Mm. Setting the data aside. But where they merge is in some of these metrics. Like I love Stride power meter. Mm. There's a couple companies now that have power meters for running. Yep. The jury's out. They're probably not super correct, but you can compare the same meter from day to day to whatever, to heat, to cold, to wind, and so that's really empowering because you don't have to worry about anything. It's like I can just leave it at 305 watts and leave it on there. And then my own interpretation of this is I have so many years of this. And so you'll see it in my logs or in my conversations with friends of like, a good day would be 295 watts or 300 watts, whatever it is. I'm probably capable of doing 305 watts. If I can do like 307, it's because I met God out there. Mm. And it's not even a thing about like fetishizing effort. It's just like you get the data and it's really cool to kind of biohack flow state. It's like that's what I see when I see this data is I see something where I know what will be required of me to maintain this wattage for this amount of time will be nothing shy of the type of day that I'm building my whole life, that I'm managing all this stuff and putting this all together for. That's the point. And some days it's just not. You do need a little bit of magic in that. And that's even with something so black and white like wattage. At this point in my life, I'm able to look at that and say, this is the max that I can really project, that I've earned based on this data. This is possible, even like in a really, really good day. But magic would be anything above this.
It's an interesting...
So it's subjective, but it allows for magic.
It is subjective, yeah, that's a very good way to put it, mate. It's almost like what I feel is we're mixing science and spirituality as close together as we can to give ourselves the best chance of doing something special is probably not the right word, but something to create almost an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, exactly.
That you can then share. So it is special, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like we're
transcendent.
We're transcendent. That's it. And we're bringing these two. Whereas a lot of people will approach it more from a spiritual side and talk about entering these flow states and stuff, but not really, maybe not give themselves the chance from a scientific standpoint. And you're almost trying to bring these two together and merge it. And I guess that answers my question of the ability to run a very fast, whatever distance it is. It still does matter. And it will always matter to you.
Yeah, you really can't stand for anything if you don't stand for winning first.
Exactly.
And also, like, I want to say a lot of crazy things because I feel a lot of crazy things, and I've lived a unique life.
Yeah.
And if I'm just some guy eating mushrooms and running in the wilderness with my clothes off, no one cares.
No one cares.
That doesn't. And it's less that anyone should care just because I am fast. It's more that that lets them think like, oh, well, this guy has a certain level of outward success or like measurable success that then he's on to something that maybe matters to me.
It's the case.
Yes.
And people need your 90-10 to be, sometimes some days be 90-10, but some days be 75-25.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Anthony,
I think
we've
they all
been
meet.
babbling for an hour. I know you guys have things, but mate, it's
been good, man. It's good finding your people.
Yeah,
it's tough. There's not a whole lot of us out there.
No, I appreciate the conversation. I think you'll have definitely given one or two of our listeners something to think about, and that's why I'm trying to sort of bring it round there, because there's a lot of people that are like, it doesn't matter, I'll run with no watch, I'll relax, this is for me. And I think that's something that's super beautiful. But did you wake up this morning wanting to go faster? And the answer for most people is yes. And I think it's a very tough day, and maybe Carsten's there already, but you and I are definitely not there, mate, where the curve is still going up, more speed. We haven't quite dropped off. He's going to hit me in a second. We haven't dropped off the other side, and that's what keeps the curiosity going. And like we said, you're using all the tools, which is beautiful as well. Yeah,
I think this is the best time to be a human critter ever. I mean, I think we're going to blow it all up in a few years. So I think right now, this is the best time. This is it. We have all the futuristic toys and we haven't ruined it yet. It's perfect.
It's awesome. Mate, how can people follow your journey, connect with you? What's the best way to be in touch?
I mean, the best way is to show up at the La Plata County Airport and I'll pick you up from the airport. You can stay with me. I'll cook you local food.
Wow.
I keep a bedroom open. We call them the monk bunks because you go monk mode.
Right.
That's my like lockdown mode.
Right.
I can sleep 7, so I've never told anyone no. Come on out here. If you can throw me a few bucks, great. If you can't, whatever. I don't care. Stay with me. Pick my brain. Use my sauna. Eat my food. Outside of that, Instagram's pretty good. Okay. I run a Patreon as well, so people can get the kind of off-record stuff where like you're not going to talk about whatever psychedelics and sex and God and stuff on Instagram. Like, and if you do, no one cares unless there's a video of you running fast next to it.
That's fine
right,
too.
Right.
Nothing's off limits.
Yeah, man. So
Instagram, we'll put a link to your Instagram in the show notes as well.
Yeah, appreciate it. People can drop me a DM. I see everything. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for
yeah,
taking
thanks
the time.
for taking the time
Appreciate
yourself,
it.
man.
That was cool.
Cool.